What's going on, guys? Good mic work back at you in the middle of a really busy week, but how could I not come up here and talk about what had to have been the funniest damn thing I have ever seen in my life last night on AEW Dynamite? Tony Khan has taken a bump. I've been wondering throughout AEW's entire history when this was going to happen, if this was going to happen. Tony Khan in the past several years ago has already been on record saying he never had any intention of being an on-screen character on his television show. Well, guess what? He's an on-screen character now, because in the main event segment of Dynamite last night, we saw the Elite beat up Tony Khan. Started off with Jack Perry punching him in the gut, and then later Tony Khan eats a Tony Khan driver, or a TK driver. One thing we have to talk about right up front is the selling. I used to think that Vince McMahon was the all-time worst seller in wrestling history. He might still be, but based on what we saw from Tony Khan last night, oh, he's got some competition now. I don't even know how you describe how Tony Khan fell. Like, Jack Perry actually threw a pretty good punch. I mean, he pulled it, obviously, but it looked pretty good and pretty intense. And he hits Tony Khan in the gut, and he just, I don't know how you describe how he fell. I mean, he just kind of like collapsed, and he didn't even like grab his gut. He just fell completely on his back, and then like a second or two delay, and then he started clutching his, his like abdomen or his stomach or his gut where he got punched. And it was just a really, really awkward type of sell. But this is somebody who doesn't do this for a living. He's not a wrestler. He doesn't get out there and take bumps routinely. So anybody who's never taken a bump before is going to look crazy weird when they do take one. However, Tony Khan has that little bit of just extra awkwardness to him. He is one of the weirdest people to see on camera. I would like to think that when you have someone who has the, who creates the online rage in, loser fans the way Tony Khan does, you have people that are just obsessed with his mere existence. The fact that this guy is breathing air throws people into a drooling, slobbering rage most of the time. So back in the day when Vince McMahon had that heat, or when Eric Bischoff had that heat, they translated that and turned that into a heel character on television. And even though Vince McMahon is a shitty seller, he's an uncoordinated, stumbling, bumbling mess whenever he tried to wrestle in that ring, Eric Bischoff isn't much better, but they're both better than Tony Khan when it comes down to this type of stuff. So I would like to think that AEW is looking at the landscape here and say, hey, if there's a whole, community of wrestling fans that hates my guts, why don't we run with that? The same way Vince ran with being a heel after the screw job. And Eric Bischoff ran with people just not liking his sniveling little prick ass. But with Tony Khan, I'm just not sure if they can pull it off, or if he can pull it off to the degree that Vince McMahon or Eric Bischoff did, being on TV regularly as a character. And those two guys were heels. So far, Tony Khan just took a beating from the Elite. And one of the first things it made me think about was the way Eric Bischoff was taking beatings from the NWO and what wound up happening. He ended up joining the NWO. So they could go in a million different directions than with this if they wanted to, but I feel like from what we know about Tony Khan right now, it's probably best if these instances are kept somewhat infrequent. Use Tony Khan out there for big angles like this was. This is going to be AEW's top story. That's been one of their critiques, right? Where's the story? What's the story? What's the story? Well, here's your fucking story, and it's going to be your top story now on television. This was the main event segment last night at Daly's Place. One thing I would suggest to AEW is not try to make this some sort of a recreation of the NWO, because the problem with that is you're trying to recreate the greatest angle in the history of the business. Don't try to do that. It's going to be impossible to ever top that. But if the Elite, start this hostile takeover of AEW. I mean, they're beating up the boss here. And then later on, if Tony Khan joins the Elite and he's out there rocking sunglasses and smoking a cigarette or whatever, trying to be cool, that would be entertaining as hell for me to watch for a couple of minutes, but it would just be so ultra cringe. I think it would just rile up the wrestling base, especially the AEW haters, to a point where they wouldn't be able to mentally take it. They are already on that line of needing to be institutionalized. So if Tony Khan is out there on TV trolling them and acting like a heel, I'm afraid some of them are going to be leaping off of buildings. So I don't even know how that's going to work. And plus, you're just going to have the natural comparison to the NWO. And there's nothing that any promotion can really ever do that's ever going to recreate anything as special as that. So I'm a little bit torn on the situation. On one hand, if you're AEW, why would you not try to capitalize on the Jack Perry stuff and even the Tony Khan stuff to a degree? And, you know, the Young Bucks and the Elite and their problems with CM Punk and that fiasco. And now AEW, much like WWE, trying to, you know, head into this new era as well. So why would you not try to capitalize and make a star out of Jack Perry if you can? Will it work? I don't know. It might not, but you have to at least try. And now with Tony Khan out there, you know, taking bumps last night for the Elite, I'm hoping this was just mainly used to get the Elite over, and it won't result in seeing Tony Khan on television as a character all the time. Every now and then, he needs to pop his head in there and have a confrontation with a talent, or maybe even taking a bump or something like that every year or two, whatever. You got to do what you got to do. I just don't think, as a wrestling fan, I would like to see him out there all the time. I wish he wasn't as awkward as he was, because Tony Khan's name, you know, just the existence of him, like I said, riles up so many fans. Why would you not try to capitalize on that and get heat? The problem is you don't have anybody here with any kind of real strong charisma or someone who could be an effective TV character. He's just way too awkward. And so that kind of sucks, because I, in other circumstances, might like to see where they go with this. But I think this was more along the lines of just getting the Elite over. So this was the main event segment of Dynamite last night. We had Swerve Strickland wrestling on the show, brand new AEW World Champion, and we had an IWGP Championship match that was technically the final match on the show, but it wasn't the final segment. The segment was with Jack Perry, and they announced earlier in the show that Tony Khan was going to confront him or speak to him in the ring. So Jack Perry came out, he called out Tony Khan, and he asked Tony Khan to shake his hand and reinstate him so they can lead AEW into this next era or whatever. And you could see this coming. I mean, man, the way the handshake went, and he hugged him, and it was very Christian-like hug, not Christian, the faith, Christian the wrestler, Christian Cage, hugging Tony Khan with his head on his shoulder, kind of looking into the camera. And you could see Jack Perry, the way he was looking right into the camera, looking right into the audience at home, that he's about to beat this dude's ass. So he raises his hand. They're spending way too much time kind of positioning, and this is when you can always tell there's a turn coming. Only problem is this time Tony Khan is in the ring. And Jack Perry, like I said earlier, he just rears back and he nails Tony Khan with a gut punch. And just the way he falls, I don't know how to describe how it's like he just like all of a sudden, like he just lost consciousness instantly, and all of his bones and muscles just crumbled flat. And then he kind of grasped his stomach and he sold it a little bit, and the selling was just hysterical to me. So as soon as Jack Perry did that to Tony, out comes the Elite, the Bucks and Okada. They run out there concerned, but again, you could tell that they were going to do more damage to Tony Khan. And so they come out there, they're kind of getting in, and they push Jack Perry away. They help up Tony Khan, who, this is another funny part of this, who now when they're helping up Tony Khan, the no selling here is off the charts. All of a sudden, he's showing no ill effects whatsoever from that gut punch. He should have been like holding himself or still trying to like be in pain. Now he's upright again. He's clear faced. He's looking at the Elite like, thank you for helping me up. Thank you for coming to my rescue. And then the Bucks just lift him up into TK driver position, formerly Meltzer driver. And Tony Khan gets hit with a Tony Khan driver and took it pretty well. I'm sure the Bucks were very careful with his ass, and they put him down and stood over Tony Khan's completely sprawled out body. Just seeing him just flat on his back like a pancake was so funny. And once the Elite finally left the ring, then for some reason, I don't know where all these wrestlers were before, but once the Elite left the ring, the wrestlers now come out to check on Tony Khan, and Shad Khan comes out there as well, Tony Khan's father. Remember Daddy's Money? This is the guy that he gets all his money from, according to the haters who just fucking can't stand it. rich families exist and the children benefit just like the McMahons and anybody else who they probably like, but for some reason it's against the rules in the Khan family. So Shad is out there, and seeing a Shad appearance was wild. Now, they were in Daly's place last night, so they were in Jacksonville. It's not like Shad flew in for this or anything, but to see Tony Khan's father out there all concerned for him was a wild thing to see. Was it not? It's our first appearance of this man. We have never seen him on any AEW program, I don't think at all, in AEW's 5 years of being around. So that was all a really interesting angle to close out the show. Now, how do they follow up with it? That's going to be the big question. A lot of fans and a lot of wrestlers, too, I think immediately last night were saying, hey, Tony Khan better be rocking a neck brace in tonight, I believe's NFL draft, right? Isn't the NFL draft taking place or begins today or something like that? So Tony Khan's going to be in that draft room. He's going to be there around the table with the other executives and owners and whatnot, you would think, or not owners, but his dad and everybody else who holds positions there with the Jaguars. And he should be rocking a neck brace. He absolutely should sell this all the way. That would give me a lot of respect for him if he sells it to that degree, wearing a neck brace at the NFL draft. That would be phenomenal. So the angle last night, I got to say, I'm intrigued by it. The execution was good, but also just Tony Khan's involvement and just his level of awkwardness is always going to make it weird. But I'm intrigued to see where it goes. And now I'm assuming the Elite are planning this hostile takeover. And with the follow-up, not just Tony Khan wearing the neck brace at the draft, but what is he going to say? Does he have any actions? Are there going to be consequences for the Elite? Because even though they're all EVPs and they're all in a position of power, Tony Khan is still the boss. Even in kayfabe, I think that's understood. So do the Elite really have the power to do that? Are they going to reveal some clauses in their contracts where they can't be fired? Or Tony Khan just had so much trust and love for them, he never felt the need, for anything like that. So they're kind of like unfireable. I don't know, because you would think there would be consequences now, or you would think Tony Khan might be pissed off. What's he going to say, on Collision, or better yet, next week on Dynamite? And how is this all going to work? The handshake reinstatement from Jack Perry, he just said, shake my hand and reinstate me. And Tony Khan did. No paperwork was filed or anything like that. So, is Tony Khan going to have to own up to his handshake agreement there with Jack Perry? Or did they just need that confirmation from Tony Khan for the Elite behind the scenes to push the paperwork through, since they're all EVPs? Don't know how this is going to work. Another interesting tidbit to note here is that next Wednesday, in Winnipeg on Dynamite, Kenny Omega is set to make his return. And from what we have understood or have heard, he is not recovered from diverticulitis yet. As a matter of fact, he's probably going to have to undergo a little bit of surgery. So if that's the case, I'm guessing the Elite's going to attack Kenny Omega next week too, right? I think Okada should put him down and unleash a vicious attack on him. And if Kenny Omega can get back and get healthy by the time All In rolls around, you got Omega and Okada at All In. So I have a feeling that next week on Dynamite in Winnipeg, the Elite and specifically Okada are going to annihilate Kenny Omega. So that should be interesting, and it will be interesting to see how this storyline progresses. But even though we're going to have a podcast on Saturday, we're going to talk about a lot of this, I said to myself, let me come up here on Thursday afternoon and at least just touch on the fact that we saw Tony Khan take a bump last night on Dynamite. It had to be one of the most hilarious fucking things I have ever seen. And in a good way. It's the same way why I liked Vince's selling. I've liked Vince's selling because of how bad it was. That's what made it entertaining. AEW sports entertained my ass off last night. That was hysterical. I thought the show was pretty good. It was a little discombobulated. It wasn't perfect, but I thought the show was fun and interesting for, returning to Daly's place, and seeing Tony Khan take a bump is always going to be wild. Also, we'll be getting into a little bit more of this on the podcast on Saturday, but just to run through a few of the other tidbits that we saw on Dynamite last night, a lot of people are talking about Swerve Strickland's match with Kyle Fletcher, which was an eliminator match, and of course, Swerve did pick up the win there. But Swerve just won the AEW title on Sunday at Dynasty, the first ever black AEW world champion. This is a brand new star you are trying to make. And the fact that Willow Nightingale got a championship celebration and Swerve Strickland did not was really crazy to me. Now, Fightful Select did have a report on this today where they had noted that the plan in AEW is for actually Swerve to have his big championship promo on Collision because they're getting a big lead-in from the NBA Finals. So they thought that that could really benefit Swerve. So apparently the reason we didn't see him have a big title celebration promo on Dynamite last night is because they're saving it for Collision. Fair enough, but this is a Daily's Place Dynamite. This is your Madison Square Garden. I would have had Swerve open up the show and cut a promo. That's the way I would have done it. They didn't do it that way. Not that Swerve can't have an awesome promo on Saturday, which, maybe that's even taped in Daily's Place. I'm not even sure with Collision. But apparently that is their thought process on not having Swerve cut a promo last night. We will hear from him on Collision. But he did beat Kyle Fletcher in a great match last night. It's just, if it was me, I would have wanted to hear from Swerve. You know what I mean? But apparently we just got to wait 2 more days. We will hear from him on Saturday. Also, Jon Moxley defended the IWGP Championship last night against Will Powerhouse Hobbs. Now, that was announced the week prior, but that was kind of the main event on the show, not Swerve and Fletcher. So kind of weird there. And Hobbs may have gotten hurt. Definitely looked like he did, tweaked his knee up or something. Might have called an audible even as well in the finish there when Moxley choked him out, because Hobbs was definitely suffering from some sort of a leg injury there. And I did not read any injury report about him today. So if there's any news on him, hopefully we'll learn that soon. Maybe you guys know, can drop it in the comments. I don't know, but hopefully he's all right. And whatever that injury was isn't too serious. Really hoping for the best for Hobbs there, because I'm a big Powerhouse Hobbs fan. Also a big fan of Willow. I know I just gave her shit a minute ago for getting a celebration when Swerve did not, but that doesn't mean I don't love the girl. She's awesome. She did have a big title celebration out there with Statlander and Stokely. And of course, Mercedes Moné showed up and stole the spotlight again. Willow is getting sick of that, and I'm liking this. I need Mercedes to be a heel. Babyface just is not working out for her in AEW. Let's make her a heel. I would have her join the Elite. I would. I'd have her join the Elite. All that money and the CEO, it seems like it's just, I mean, a lot of factions have women now, and I think she'd be a perfect one to add to the Bucks and Okada and Jack Perry. I would love to see Mercedes join the Elite. We'll see if she does. But Willow and her, of course, have the big showdown at Double or Nothing, and now a lot of fans are already starting to get mad early. Willow just won the belt, and so many of us can see the writing on the wall here that she's probably going to drop it to Mercedes at Double or Nothing. So maybe AEW pulls a fast one here and actually goes in a different direction there. We will see. Also, we had the Chuck and Trent Beretta and OC thing finally coming to a head. Chuck was supposed to choose between Trent and OC tonight. Cassidy got beat up by Trent backstage, and then he just laid unconscious in the ring while Chuck and Trent worked out their shit. And in the end, Chuck wound up choosing OC and battled and fought off Trent, and the two of them are going to have a match on Rampage, I believe, tomorrow, I think. And also, we had a long and great gauntlet match to determine the new #1 contender for the international title, and Will Ospreay won that. So it's going to be Will Ospreay and Roderick Strong for the international title at Double or Nothing. So I kind of like how Ospreay and Okada are coming in and winning some secondary titles before they both obviously at some point move on to the main events. The gauntlet match was a little weird. Announcers did not seem to know how many people were even in this thing, but in the end it was Ospreay outlasting everybody, and he will be taking on Roddy at Double or Nothing. So, and one more thing. Big Bill wants to learn under the Jericho learning tree. And I think Jericho's gimmick is not only trolling CM Punk, but also trolling Def Rebel. Did you hear this music that he had last night? Definitely sounds like a Def Rebel theme. I swear Jericho is trolling here. And even though Jericho is no longer one of my favorites in the business, his ability to troll in clever ways still remains, and I at least appreciate that. So Big Bill, Jericho's going to consider Big Bill's request to learn under the Jericho learning tree. We'll see where that goes. I'm sure we can have some fun January 6th discussions between those two guys. We'll see. But hopefully that'll lead to something good good for Big Bill, because Bill just, his sheer presence just to me screams main eventer and nothing else. So the fact that he hasn't been able to find that in either company yet is crazy, especially just his size and the good shape he's in and whatnot. So we'll see, if Jericho gives him a little nudge that is needed. I don't really know. He's already been tag team champion in the company, so maybe he can target some singles gold, or maybe even that FTW title itself. We will have to see. Last night's Dynamite was a weird one, but not a bad one. Tony Khan taking a bump and selling was weird, but not bad. Tony Khan going against his own statement that he never wants to be a character on TV is not something that bothers me. Everybody's freaking out. You said you weren't going to be a character. Yeah, plans don't change. I'm sure Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman said a lot of shit too that they went back on, okay? So let's not jump and get too excited over this one little thing. Circumstances change, wrestling landscape changes, lots of things change, and sometimes if you make a decision 5 years later, it's not going to be the same decision you once had. So let's just not freak out too much about that. Overall, last night's Dynamite was fun. It was fun to see Tony Khan go through that, because it was so hilarious to watch him physically do that. And I thought the show was fun and exciting and somewhat intriguing, and I'm excited to see where this storyline goes, because this is a storyline that could revitalize and rejuvenate AEW, or it could be a storyline that completely falls flat on its face. Only time will tell. But had to come up here today and talk to you guys just for a couple of minutes about what we saw last night on Dynamite. Whole lot of fun. Thanks for hanging out with me today for a few minutes on Thursday. We will be back on Saturday to talk WWE Draft. Night 1 of the draft kicks off tomorrow on SmackDown. Lots going on there and lots to unpack on Saturday, so be sure you join us. And this Sunday, we have our classic watch-along already scheduled. The link is up. WCW Spring Stampede 1994. 30-year anniversary of that show. We're going to watch that on Sunday. So I will be catching you guys this weekend. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.